What is up, guys? This is the Spotcast again. This is Alex. Coming at you today with our first MMA episode. Have Chase Hodges joining us today. I know we kind of joke about me, me picking at pro wrestling and the things that pro wrestlers do that are inaccurate according to amateur wrestling, but me and Chase have wrestled together for a long time, done jiu-jitsu together, and so we're going to do a weight class by weight class year-end review of the UFC. And whenever Sam has any questions or anything like that, he's gonna hop in with us and help us out. But yeah, we're gonna start off with flyweight, which of course the champion is Demetrius Johnson, has been the champion. Um, yeah, uh, honestly, no one in flyweight is really gonna touch Demetrius anytime soon. He's fought Joseph Benavidez twice.
Well, he just broke Anderson Silva's title with him.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anybody in that weight class is going to come near him. I think the only time that we're going to see him have any form of competition is going to be if someone from bantamweight comes down.
Dana White said they fight with Shaw, Demetrius Johnson.
Well, there you go. I mean, honestly, that's the only fight they can make for Demetrius Johnson. That would be any form of competition. The guys, I mean, honestly, probably the pound for pound best in the world right now. So, moving on to bantamweight, which is honestly a much more contentious weight class, we have the fresh champion TJ Dillashaw, who's now a two-time champion, who just beat Cody Garbrandt, who is number one, and our personal favorite wrestler or fighter in the UFC.
Be fair, Cody Garbrandt knocked him out in the first round, and then he ran out of time.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest here, Cody Garbrandt did win that fight. And then after that, you have Dominic Cruz at number two. Always a awesome champion, always in contention.
He beat TJ Dillashaw in the last fight.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, you have such an interesting trio between those three at the top. Trio between TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt, and Dominic Cruz. You can put any combination of the three of them together and have a title fight.
I mean, if you take 2 of the 3, you fought them 10 times, 5. It's that close. There's also a huge drop off from those 3 in the rest of the weight class.
Absolutely. After that, though, you have Rafael Assunção, who's had some impressive victories over the past or over this year in 2017, but nothing compared to what the top 3 in that weight class are doing. Then Jimmy Rivera, Marlon Moraes, John Lineker. John Lineker showed some flashes of brilliance early on in the year and then kind of just fell off after that.
He was supposed to fight Jimmy Rivera, who's currently at 4. Jimmy Rivera has a win over Uriah Faber, and Lineker actually pulled out with an injury. It was supposed to be on the card that just passed.
You're right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. And then Brian Caraway at 7, which Brian Caraway has nobody to blame but himself for his ranking.
He's turned down too many fights. He thought that he deserved a title shot when he was ranked number 4. He's fought since Aljamain Sterling.
He beat Aljamain Sterling in that one fight that he said he was too good for anyway, and then
he turned down a fight with Cody Garbrandt, and then Cody Garbrandt's next fight he became.
Yeah, talk about not grabbing an opportunity whenever you should have just done it. Then Aljamain Sterling, John Dodson, Thomas Almeida round out the top 10 in that weight class. I think out of all of them, really though, if we're being honest, in my opinion, the bottom 3 in the top 10 have more promise than the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 position.
Family?
In bantamweight. I think Aljamain Sterling, Thomas Almeida, and John Dodson honestly have more promise than Brian Caraway, John Lineker, and Marlon.
Yeah, the guy that you mentioned either time, Jimmy Rivera. I think that outside of the top 3, I don't know how Rafael Assunção is ranked above him. Jimmy Rivera's 4-0 in the UFC, and he kind of humiliated Uriah Faber. I think if he would have beaten John Lineker, he would have fought one of the top 3.
Honestly, he might be just like one big win away from kind of breaking into that top 3.
He's the Robert Whittaker a bantamweight. Robert Whitaker was like 3 or 4-0, and everyone forgot about him. But then he beat Jacare Souza and Yoel Romero back to back.
Which is, I mean, that's just two incredible victories, right? One right after the other, which we'll talk a little bit more about Whitaker later on. Moving on to featherweight, we of course kind of had a little bit of a tumultuous year. Finished out with Max Holloway as the champion, Jose Aldo as number one, Frankie Edgar as number two, Brian Ortega as number three, Cub Swanson as number four, and Josh Emmett as number five, rounding out the top five. Josh Emmett going from not ranked to ranked in the most recent UFC rankings. An impressive move by him.
I'm just happy Jose Aldo is no longer the champ. I think he was good. I think he was overrated. You get a guy that fights once a year. Of course, his win percentage is going to be high. The second you get this guy pressure to fight more than once a year, he loses to Conor, Max Holloway twice.
Yeah, I think that was his big problem, is that he almost had this weird way of going about fighting where he just focused on one fight a year, thought that was the most important thing, and if you put the pressure on him to keep going throughout the year, he just couldn't handle it.
He's kind of getting old.
Yeah, he's getting old,
prime.
Getting past his years. He's now lost to Max Holloway twice, I believe. I mean, he's about done. I think my next interesting fight that I want to see on this is Max Holloway.
I don't know. I might be biased towards Frankie Edgar. I think he takes it.
And I am too. And I think me and you are both kind of biased towards Frankie. We've always kind of wanted him to succeed, and just kind of waited for him to have that moment.
As soon as Jose Aldo lost, I was like, all right, sweet. This is Frankie's belt again.
Yep. Honestly, I just want him to win it, and I'd be very happy. Moving on to lightweight, the champion, Conor McGregor, quotation champion, and then number one, the interim champion, Tony Ferguson. Number two, Habib Nurmagomedov, coming off an impressive victory last night. Then the Underground King, Eddie Alvarez. Number four, Edson Barbosa.
Eddie Alvarez, by the way, a former champ of this weight class, who just knocked out Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, and which right after Edson Barbosa at number four is number five, Justin Gaethje. Number six, Dustin Poirier. Number seven, Kevin Lee. Number eight, Nate Diaz. Number nine, Michael Chiesa. Number 10, Michael Johnson, right out of that top 10. This is just an interesting weight class because Conor McGregor is a champion. You don't know what he's going to do. Tony Ferguson's the interim champion. We heard Habib say last night he'll fight either of them. He'd fight both of them in one night if they'd let him.
Any combination of those three guys, it's probably going to be fight of the year. I mean, if you get Conor versus Tony Ferguson's jiu-jitsu, or you get against Khabib's, ground and pound. Conor doesn't like fighting wrestlers. Either of those fights are good. And Khabib versus Tony is insane because Khabib's going to outstrike him. He take him down with ease, but does he really want to be a guy like Tony Ferguson?
But at the same time, Habib has great ground and pound. He has great ground control. But Tony Ferguson is probably the greatest person in the UFC to try to think how to word this. He's the best at finishing you from his back. He can be on his back and he'll finish you in ways that you're not prepared for. And, Habib hasn't really had to face that. I think it's a very interesting fight. I think that's probably the next big fight to make it lightweight. Because we don't really know when Conor's going to fight next. Conor had a great year, though. I mean, he fought Mayweather, showed that he had the boxing prowess. Conor, for all intents and purposes, had a good year.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to make his next fight a title defense, whether or not it's immediately against Tony or they give Habib a chance first. Because that's the most interesting fight for Conor, being the biggest name in the UFC, is fighting a guy like Habib who could be undefeated before their fight. If you really want to pull a guy like Conor McGregor, out of his semi-retirement phase, you give him a fight that's
Absolutely. And I mean, after Habib performed last night, I feel like Conor has to at least see the value in the fight. Habib has really kind of made a name for himself in the past couple of weeks leading up to his most recent fight, and I think it's marketable, and I think that's what Conor's about, is marketable, and I think a fight with Habib is marketable, but at the same time, deny Tony Ferguson that fight. Moving on to welterweight, uh, the champ that I'm honestly not crazy about, but I can't help but to respect him, Tyron Woodley, number one. Following him is Stephen Thompson, number two. The man who has come into welterweight and just absolutely trashed people, Rafael dos Anjos. Number three, Colby Covington. Number four, Robbie Lawler. Number five, Damian Maya. Number six, Jorge Masvidal. Seven, Darren Till. Eight, Carlos Condit. Nine, Santiago Ponzabia. And number 10, Donald Cerrone. Uh, I think this is still the most stacked weight class in the UFC. And me and you have agreed on this probably for the last 3 years that welterweight is the most stacked weight class in the UFC.
I mean, you have a weight class with Donald Cerrone, who's a 10th ranked guy. Carlos Condit, who arguably beat Robbie Lawler in a title fight, is at number 8. Jorge Masvidal and Damian Maya, who both been title those low as 5 and 6. Former champ at Robbie Lawler, all the way down at 4. RDA, former champ of lightweight, still not even the number one contender. We talk about Stephen Thompson.
I mean, and Stephen Thompson is arguably one of the guys that you could talk about for the pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world. I don't know that there's much better strikers or kickboxers than him. Um, this weight class, just top to bottom, it doesn't have a weak spot. I mean, if you want to go down into the 11 through 15 spot, we have at 11 Kamaru Usman, 12 Neil Magny,
who actually just beat him last night. It's not a
yeah, this is an update as of last night's fight, but yeah, he just beat Carlos Condit last night. Number 13, Gunnar Nelson. Number 14, Dong Hyun Kim. And number 15, Yancy Medeiros. All the way down to the 15th spot. This is a stacked weight class. I think heading into 2018, though, we really got to watch RDA. When RDA decided that he was going to take over lightweight, man, he looked like there was barely anybody who could stop him. Of course, Eddie Alvarez figured out the formula to fix it, but I think really the thing that beat RDA back then was the weight cut. And now that he's out of weight, that he's not having to cut a whole lot of weight.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do if Tyron's he decided to finally go through surgery. He's going to be a while before he's back. So if we fought the best two guys for an interim title, it would be RDA and Stephen. Hands down, Stephen Thompson's just as good as Tyron.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably, he tied him twice. He just didn't do enough to take the belt. The fight is RDA and Stephen Thompson. But if we're talking money, we got a guy like Colby Covington, even though he's only had one big win.
Damn it, I was hoping you were going to do this.
He's a moron, but he talks so much shit. He's got everyone in the UFC's attention. He just talks shit about Brazil. And then RDA, a Brazilian guy, just beats Robbie Lawler. If I know the UFC, they make Colby Covington RDA
for the interim title.
Just because Colby Covington's so hot right now, just running his mouth. I think Stephen Thompson gets screwed in that scenario.
Yep.
But I don't think anybody wants to watch Stephen Thompson and Tyron Woodley fight again.
Well, and here's my thing. I mean, Tyron Woodley's probably going to be on the shelf for a good amount of time. Who's to say RDA and Colby Covington don't fight, about March or so. Tyron, from what I understand, isn't going to be back until about August. We do RDA Colby Covington for the interim in March. Stephen Thompson versus the winner of that in July, and then the winner of that faces Tyron.
I mean, they would make if they had to defend the interim title, they would just make Woodley relinquish the title.
Of course, I think Dana would like to make Tyron relinquish. I think out of all of his champions, Tyron's his least favorite. Moving on to middleweight champion Robert Whittaker, who I don't know if he's inherited it or Robert Whittaker is
I mean, he beat Jacare Souza and Yo Romero back to back. I mean, he made Jacare Souza look silly. He had 5 rounds. Yo Romero. He beat literally the two best guys in the weight class. George St. Pierre's not coming back.
Yep.
We've barely seen anything out of Luke Rockhold. He beat the best two guys in the weight class.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Robert Whittaker was a guy that earlier this year, weren't really talking about, not you personally, but people, period, weren't really talking about as one of those top middleweights. But he's really shown that he absolutely is, and yeah, he's had a stellar year. Number one following him is Yoel Romero. Man, I'm a Yoel Romero fan. I'm a big fan of him. All star wrestler, probably one of the best wrestlers in the UFC, if not the best wrestler in the UFC. Number two, Luke Rockhold. If he can get over the modeling career and whatever hangups he has about whatever fights he won't take, he'll be great. Number three, George St. Pierre. He came back for the fight. He won the title. He vacated it.
It's kind of common knowledge though that he's not gonna fight. Probably not gonna fight in the UFC again. I think it's silly that they even kept him in the ranking. Dana White himself has said he's.
Yeah, I don't. I think the only reason they keep him in their rankings is to remind people that GSP is a UFC fighter.
It's like keeping, John Jones in the ring. He could be arguably the pound for pound best, but he's also.
Well, that is the next weight class, and he's not in the ranking. But
Right.
number four, Jacare Souza, who is probably my favorite middleweight, if we're being honest.
He's the best.
Best jiu-jitsu. No, every time he loses, I can't figure out why. And that sounds weird, but when he loses,
Well, it was just Robert Whitaker. Before that, it was way back to Romero, but that was like a 3-round split decision.
mhm.
People argue that Souza won.
He loses close fights, but he sits at that number four ranking. I think if he puts it together in 2018, he can make something of himself. Number five, Chris Weidman, the former champion. If you ask a lot of people, I think he's the best person in that weight class. Um, it, if he puts it together, if he figures it out, he's the best guy on any given day. Um, but he's in the number five spot.
All right, well, no, I'm making any accusation, but he hasn't been the same since USADA's been around. I mean, he looked incredible when he fought Anderson Silva, but I mean, he lost a lot of rough fights in a row after that. And even though he just beat Kelvin Gastelum, there was a moment in that fight that really screamed like any good striker is gonna knock out Chris Weidman. His chin's just not there. He tries to force the wrestling. It's not gonna work on everybody. Look at these top ranked guys. You can try to wrestle Jacare Souza all he wants. He's gonna get choked out. You can try to wrestle Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero out wrestled him in the fight.
Yep.
And outside of that, we have Luke Rockhold, who made him look like a bitch in their title fight.
Yep. No, and I say that Chris Weidman, if he's on, he's the best guy in that weight class because when he is on, he is an Anderson Silva beater. He is a
Pre-USADA.
but yeah pre USADA, and that's the problem
He's not been the same
since USADA. Number six, probably the guy that I think is on the quickest rise, probably the guy that I think has the biggest opportunity, most to show, Kelvin Gastelum. Uh, I it, thing with Kelvin Gastelum is he's off and on. Now that he's not doing a weight cut that he can't make, I think he's probably pretty well on. I think he still has a lot to prove though. That Michael Bisping win was big, but he was also fighting a Michael Bisping who was 2 weeks off of fighting. So I don't know how much that's.
It's funny. He loses to Chris Weidman. His next fight is a win over Michael Bisping. He wants to know why he's not fighting for a title.
Yeah.
To me, that's hilarious. Like, he just lost to Chris Weidman. He beats a now ranked 7 Michael Bisping, luckiest champion we've ever had.
Fuki.
God bless his soul. And Kelvin Gastelum honestly wonders why he's not fighting for a title.
And speaking of Michael Bisping, at number 7 is Michael Bisping, who, regardless of what anyone says, was probably the most entertaining title reign we've had in a while.
It should have never happened, but it was still awesome.
It should have never happened, but at the same time, the man deserved it. I'm glad he did it. I hope he retires. Go out, go out with a smile. At number 8 is Derek Brunson, a guy who was on a pretty good upswing, but recently has kind of faltered a little bit. Not really sure what he needs to get moving back in 2018. But
He's a fight schedule. You could check. He's a fight schedule.
Let's
I think it's Brunson pretty soon.
um. Actually? I think you're right. What?
Brunson beat Machida, and
Fought Machida on October 28th. Yeah, Jacare Souza on January 27th.
which is just weird. To me, Jared Brunson kind of has nothing to lose there. The fight as a super high ranked guy for almost no reason. Jacare Souza, he should still technically be a fight away from a title fight. I feel like it's kind of unfair to him for him to fight someone ranked as low as Jared Brunson.
Yeah, but I have also heard things about Jacare not cooperating about higher level fights. And basically only saying, give me the champion or give. But moving on to light heavyweight, we have the guy who lost the title but is now the champion again because John Jones, worst enemy is John Jones. Champion Daniel Cormier at light heavyweight. Um, no matter what happens with the John Jones situation, John Jones can be looked at nothing but a cheater. So Daniel Cormier is the rightful champion, and we're talking about an Olympic level wrestler. Some people boo him. I think he's awesome. I love him. He's the rightful light heavyweight champion.
As I mentioned, he won fights at heavyweight.
Yeah.
Before he moved to light heavyweight. I think he'd be the champion of either weight class. I mean, things are a lot different now. We have, for instance, a guy, Stipe. But I think if he would have stayed at heavyweight, he would have been the champ. The only reason he moved is he made the last hit.
Yeah, but now that Kane's kind of moving out, we might see that changing here soon. Yeah, at number one behind him is Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson is one of my favorite fighters.
He almost knocked out DC in their fight.
He did.
He sent John Jones to the hospital in their fight.
I could watch Alexander Gustafsson and Daniel Cormier fight literally forever. They could rematch those guys as many times as they want. I don't care. Number two is Volkan Ozdemir, who is fighting Daniel Cormier this next card in January.
Volkan has a UFC record right now.
What for? What?
If you combine all of his times in the octagon, or just his professional MMA career, it's like the lowest amount of time. It was Ronda Rousey held it before. But he's finished fights that quickly. He's had to stay in the octagon at least.
Just because he keeps fucking dudes up?
Yeah, round one.
Damn. Well, that's the same night as someone else who was very, very well known for fucking dudes up, who I actually gave my MMA Fighter of the Year during my podcast earlier, but we'll talk about him in a minute. Well, yeah, he's a beast. Yeah, keep going down for light heavyweight. Number 3, Glover Teixeira. Number 4, Jamie Manawan. Number 5, Owen St. Preux. 6, Mauricio Hua. I'm glad to see Mauricio Hua as high as 6. Man, he had a great career kind of in the mid-2000s. People thought he was the next big thing in light heavyweight, and he kind of fell off. So I'm glad that he's at least picked up a couple wins this year.
So outside of, Vulcan's interesting for DC, I guess. But, my logic is if Anthony Johnson wasn't going to freak knockout DC, I don't really know that Vulcan can.
No,
But Alexander Gustafsson, that rematch is incredible. After that, though, the rest of light heavyweight, and there are a lot of good guys, but they're so inconsistent, and they fight each other over and over and over again. And it's hard for one guy to establish himself as like the next big thing. The answer to Daniel Cormier, because it's like, yeah, you might get on a 2-fight win streak, and you get knocked out by the guy number 10. The vicious cycle just repeats itself.
Yeah.
So outside of Gustafsson, there's really no great fight for DC light heavyweight.
No, I mean, honest to God, DC's kind of ran through everybody. And I mean, John Jones isn't going to get his shit together anytime soon for them to do a real final fight together that matters. If Daniel Cormier beats Volkan Ozdemir, I think the only other fight you can make is him and Alexander Gustafsson again. And then if he beats Alexander Gustafsson, then if I'm Daniel Cormier, I retire and I find sponsors and I just make commercials and I chill and
or he moves up to heavyweight.
See, but man, he's old.
Who cares?
I'd love to see him go back up to heavyweight, but
watch Ngannou become champion.
Well, that's a good segue. I don't know if he wants to go after any of these guys up here. The champion, of course, right now is Stipe Miocic, who is probably my personal favorite fighter in the UFC right now. I love Stipe, the everyman, the firefighter. I enjoy the hell out of the guy. Um, but he's fighting probably the scariest man in the world.
He's the most athletic heavyweight that has ever and will ever be.
Francis Ngannou.
He's a heavyweight without a shred of body fat. He's incredibly tall. He looks like Brock Lesnar, but without the steroids. He's super quick for a heavyweight. He hits harder than anybody I've ever seen in the UFC. And he's such a quick learner. Like, he hasn't fought very long. I thought he was just a knockout artist, and then I watched him go out and win in the UFC with a submission he had learned 5 rounds before the fight.
You know something that I found out earlier this week? That's not his first submission victory
in the UFC, but not
outside of the UFC. He has actually had
with a guillotine and an armbar.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's not just a knockout artist. He is the full package. He's just terrifying.
What's crazy is not only did we get like a perfect physical specimen, but then we got a guy that, because of his background, devoted his life to the UFC, and how they've moved him to the UFC training center. It's like the most state-of-the-art place you could possibly. They basically have everything. So they took like a perfect freak specimen, and then gave him like the greatest training like possible in the UFC.
And this UFC training center is relatively new, and he's kind of the first big star to really go there and train. And he's really kind of put it on the map. And I mean, Joe Rogan, who is probably our favorite podcaster ever, kind of compared it to when Ivan Drago was getting trained by the Russians.
Where Rocky?
In Rocky,
yeah,
where you're just
I heard that
you're training someone who is already superiorly gifted with everything that you could possibly.
I just don't have any doubt in my mind that Francis Ngannou would probably be the best heavyweight of our lifetime. I guess that I watched his first fight in the UFC, and I was blown away immediately. This is a guy that multiple times reminded my little brother, my friends watching MMA, this guy's gonna be the next big thing. I feel like he got doubted a lot until he was slated to fight Alistair Overeem, and then all of a sudden everybody was thinking.
I definitely doubted him. I thought he was another Czech Congo, for those who remember him. But the fight that I found them, okay, this guy's legitimate. It is his Andrei Arlovsky fight. I've always kind of been had a soft spot, I guess, for Andrei Arlovsky. And when he knocked him out like that, I was like, all right.
The funny thing about people still kind of try to doubt him after the Alistair Overeem fight. Like, oh, well, Alistair's been knocked out 15 times in his career. Yeah, but he's also fought 60 times. Also, he was a K1 kickboxing world champion.
Yep.
And it wasn't just that Francis landed some big, powerful shot. His footwork and head work, and, his head movement rather, his angles, they were superior to Alistair Overeem, who was a K1 kickboxer.
One of the best kickboxers of all time, arguably.
He knocked him out, not with it wasn't just because the shot was powerful, but he slipped in an uppercut that there was no way Alistair Overeem could have been ready for. If you watch that in slow motion, it looks like he breaks his spine by hitting him in the chin. And when he hits the canvas, his eyes were rolled up, but they were still open. And he was frozen solid with his toes curled. I mean, there was nobody home.
I mean,
and that was Alistair Overeem.
Yeah, we're talking about which we haven't even gotten to the other heavyweight rankings, which honestly they don't really matter right now. But Alistair Overeem, who is number 2 in the contendership, who just got knocked the fuck out by Francis Ngannou. Number 3, Fabricio Verdum, who was a guy that I thought for a while could prove to be the best heavyweight of all time. I don't know that he still can't prove that. I just think he has got to get a little bit more focused. I think he almost got a little too confident in himself. Number 4, Cain Velasquez.
He's the only other man besides Stipe and Francis that I feel like could be the champion.
Yeah.
He's got to stop. I mean, he's a back injury that keeps pulling him out of fights. If he's healthy, though, he's a problem for either one of those guys, because I think that Francis might have better wrestling. I don't really know where Ngannou's jiu-jitsu is as far as just overall grappling. Like Kane.
Oh, and Kane's a college wrestler, wrestling for Arizona State.
He trains with Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely up there in the wrestling. But Kane and Francis is a fight that I'm very interested in, especially if Stipe can pull it out against Francis. I'm very interested in a Kane Francis.
This is the first time that heavyweight has looked like a legitimate weight class. Usually there's maybe one or two good guys, or it's so inconsistent. Everybody's knocking everybody out.
Yep.
But when you got Stipe as a champ, Francis Ngannou was the best big thing. We still have Verduma Velasquez. We got like up and comers for the first time ever. Curtis Blades, I think he's undefeated in the UFC.
Which I don't know if you meant.
No. He does have one loss. It's a Francis Ngannou.
Yeah,
his debut.
Yep. But I mean, Curtis Blades is he's up and coming. And I don't even know if you meant to skip over him. Alexander Volkov, crazy Russian, kind of going through that.
He's the really, really tall dude, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
He was pretty good.
He's on his way up. Marcin Tybura, Alexei Olenek, Junior Albini, and Tim Johnson, all kind of relatively new guys that have just kind of sprung on the scene this year in heavyweight, that are all, show potential. And it's the first time in a long time that the UFC's heavyweight division really looked like something that can be it. Moving on to the women's divisions, women's strawweight, we've got the champion Rose Namajunas.
Thug Rose.
Is another one of those weight classes where the top two are just kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. The number one contender, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, held that title for a very, very long time.
She was better than Ronda Rousey ever was.
Absolutely, 100%.
She's underrated because she doesn't look close to a girl.
Which, if you look at her in her Instagram, she's actually like.
I know, but it was the whole blonde and beautiful thing for Ronda Rousey. But Joanna Jędrzejczyk had more title defenses.
Yep.
She went undefeated longer. Truly, I think she's still the better fighter between her and Rose. But I think that now that we have more, weight classes in women's fighting, I think Joanna, if she goes up to a weight that she's not cutting for, like flyweight, I don't know that she ever loses again. And I think if she fought Rose at flyweight, Rose has no chance. I think if she's cutting a strawweight, there's only so many times she can do that. She actually fired the most recent guy that was over her nutrition. What's up?
Keep going.
Like her nutritionalist, she fired. The weight cut's too much for her. And we both know when you cut too much weight, it's at that point anybody can beat you if you're really that depleted. And Joanna didn't look like she looked in any of her other fights. Honestly, to me, Joanna is still the most dominant woman fighter I've ever seen. I know we have Chris Cyborg, but I just haven't seen enough of her in the UFC to really make that call. I mean, she looked great last night.
I completely agree. Joanna has probably my favorite women's fighter since I saw her. I think there was a good period of time where I firmly believe, men or women, she was the best striker in the UFC. Those hits were just something else that really set her apart from everyone. And if the weight cut is really what's kind of causing her issues, get segueing into this next weight class.
This is flyweight. There's nobody there to view her flyweight.
Yeah, I want to discuss flyweight, but I can't because I recognize one name, and it's Liz Carmouche.
Meg Rawlings,
at 14.
Alexis Davis at 3, but
I don't even know who the champion, Nico Montana.
I don't know how I missed that.
I don't know that I could tell you, like I could place a face with who that is.
I feel like the UFC makes a lot of money with Rose as the strawweight champ and Joanna as the flyweight champ. I feel like if Joanna wants to go up at all, which she should do, but then there's the problem that she might want to avenge her only loss to Rose, and that might be her reason for staying down there. I feel that it's like Conor getting obsessed with Nate Diaz,
which I could see Joanna do. But yeah, just coupling the women's flyweight discussion because we don't really have a discussion for that. If Joanna wants to go over
that's
there,
terrible.
That's her weight class. I literally could not tell you who Nico Montana.
It's odd because that's the middleweight between the two,
Mm-hmm.
but that weight class was created, and instead of anybody, legitimate joining it, they either all cut the straw weight or they all just jumped up to bantamweight all of a sudden.
Yeah. I don't know what that weight class is, but speaking of bantamweight, champion Amanda Nunez, who I think people almost forget that she's champion. Sometimes they discuss women's featherweight um, and women's strawweight, but they forget that Amanda Nunez has beaten Misha Tate and
Valentina Shevchenko.
Valentina Shevchenko, and most importantly, Ronda Rousey. Um,
She was Ronda Rousey's beat.
uh, but yeah, so Amanda Nunez is our champion at women's bantamweight #1. Following that is Valentina Shevchenko.
That fight with Shevchenko was awesome,
and I would love to see that again. I think that's the next, maybe not the next fight to make, but you could definitely make it again and no one would complain.
They made the right call with Amanda Nunez, even without the champions nod. But for everyone that thought Valentina Shevchenko won that fight, I totally see where they're coming. It was a great fight.
Absolutely. #2, the woman who just fought at women's featherweight, Holly Holm. I don't really ever see her going back to bantamweight now that she fought at featherweight. She probably likes that weight class a lot better, less of a weight cut. #3, Juliana Pena. Um, the thing with women's bantamweight, as it is with most of the women's weight classes, it falls off after the first one or two. And I think a big indication of that is that if you go all the way down to 9, Ronda Rousey, who just dropped a spot, Ronda Rousey is a woman who 2 years ago we thought was the pinnacle of how good women's MMA could get. And now we've been shown that she was frankly not good.
Okay, so when the UFC first started fighting women, Ronda Rousey was definitely the most talented athlete overall.
Yes.
She was like, what was it? Judo.
She's a judo silver medalist. Yes.
So anybody that wasn't a super talented striker, she was going to beat. She was the most experienced athlete in the weight class, but she created a weight class too big for her to be the champion of anymore. I mean, she was a hero to women's fighting, but the problem is she brought in strikers from all over the world. And if we're being frank, she can't fight strikers. So that's why, she got head kicked by Holly Holm and just very simply outboxed. Amanda Nunez used like a little 1-2 over and over and knocked Ronda Rousey out.
And Holly Holm took advantage of Ronda's openings and Ronda's weaknesses. Amanda Nunez just beat the shit out of Ronda.
We had little understanding of women's MMA at the time. I think that's why we got overhyped on Ronda Rousey.
Yep.
Once we saw what extremely talented strikers could do to her, they basically made her judo useless, which is crazy. So somebody that we thought was invincible, let's pretend Ronda was still fighting. She could probably beat anybody in that weight class that's not a super good striker just by throwing them with ground and pound. Maybe she submits them. But everybody in that weight class right now that, as an above average striker, Ronda Rousey just doesn't. She was never quite the monster we thought she was.
No, and I think that's just a natural evolution in fighting. Is you can look back at, like, let's say back when we thought Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell were the pinnacle of MMA, and now you look at him like, man, you wouldn't hold a candle.
Yeah, they're not in the top 5 greatest at all.
But moving on to the last weight class, which we actually don't have rankings for, oddly enough. Women's featherweight, which the champion is, of course, Chris Cyborg.
It's funny, people from every other weight class, they just kind of jump up, to fight her, try to get in those rankings. Not very many women that are strictly women's featherweight yet.
Well, it's Cyborg's weight class. They made it so they can keep her there and keep a title on her, and she deserves it. Though. She's arguably the best women's fighter in the world, pound for pound.
I would love to watch her fight Amanda Nunez. What is Joanna's your check?
Yeah, if Joanna could put on enough weight to make it competitive.
Like I said, I don't think she likes to cut the straw weight.
What
kind of athlete she is, like, what? Imagine if she starts like lifting.
I don't think Cyborg could You mean Joanna doesn't like to cut strawweight?
Right, so she wants to go up. I don't think she. If she takes half the testosterone Cyborg's taking, she'll make that weight class no problem.
I mean, maybe we could have a meet over at Baseball today.
Just wait. I mean, think about Amanda Nunes.
I'd love an Amanda Nunes Chris Cyborg fight. I mean, if we're being honest, I think he's the only person in the UFC who can touch Chris Cyborg.
Like, I think Amanda Nunes decisively beat Holly Holm, and Holly Holm got the fight. People talk like that was the only logical fight to make, but Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes either won. I think opposing Cyborg.
Absolutely. But yeah, that's it for our that's our run through the rankings for the UFC for the year. I think it's going to be an interesting 2018 as every year tends to be. But thank you for everyone for checking us out and for listening to our first MMA episode. Thank you, Chase, for coming on.
We're terrible. It's okay though.
We've been worse though. We've been worse.
Oh, we've been way worse.
Thank you, Sam.
Sam.
Yeah, I finally came in to say something.
No. You managed to listen to all that.
Oh yeah, I was listening. I was learning.
Dude, if there was like a highlight reel in the background of the people we were talking about, that would have been legit for you.
I would have loved that. No, somebody said something about Czech Congo as I was like staring at my phone. Someone said Czech Congo, and I was like, I'm listening now. I'm back in this.
That's hilarious.
From years ago.
You guys are old men.
I love that guy.
Hey, Sam's younger than me and you.
What?
Sam's younger. Sam is coming down here for the Royal Rumble, and that will be his 21st birthday on.
Holy shit!
On January 28th.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
21's always a good one, even if you've already been drinking. It's just like, hey,
Sam.
I still can't rent a car. Everything else, I'm good to go.
At least I can get a fucking room at any hotel I want.
Right, finally.
But thank you, everyone. This will actually be our last podcast of. Well, actually, it won't be our last podcast of 2017. This will be our first podcast of 2018.
Hey, yeah, it's 4 a.m. my time. I think it's 3:17 your time.
3
Such a
a.m.
white person observation.
Thanks, man. 3 a.m. my time. But thanks, guys. Good talking to you, and peace.
Appreciate you guys.
Love you.
When you see me, homie, yeah, you see me gooned up. All my niggas start ready to bust my doula. Talking out the side of your neck, not cool, bruh. Make me violent to the puts in your chest with Ruger. When you see me, homie, yeah, you see me gooned up. All my niggas start ready to bust my doula. Talking out the side of your neck, not cool, bruh. Make us violent to the puts in your chest with Ruger. Okay, again, let me get 32 in the clip, I'ma hit 'em. Niggas talking about racks, they ain't got no sacks. If so, let's go get 'em. I'm the hardest, bitch, I'm the coldest. To the low, everybody know this. Height side, yeah, that's Front Street. Pussy niggas don't want beef. Did I mention? I'm north side. Back center, that's court side. And I'm known to let the torch ride. Cut my hair off cause I let the torch ride. First 48, y'all beat the case. Don't fuck with many cause niggas fake. Sugar coated, sweet as hell. Move them bells, no legal scales. When you see me, homie, yeah, you see me gooned up. All my niggas start ready to bust my doula. Talking out the side of your neck, not cool, bruh. Make me violent to the puts in your chest with Ruger. When you see me, homie, yeah, you see me gooned up. All my niggas start ready to bust my doula. Talking out the side of your neck, not cool, bruh. Make me violent to the puts in your chest with Ruger. Ruger. This is Young Hitman in the building. Free the homies build. Listen, what's up, man? You niggas know me, still yelling free bill and motherfucker police. I grind hard with no sleep, up all night with my main screen. Fuck you pussy niggas, get in they head, brain free. I Why you niggas talking? I can't hear you cause I'm on that loud. Why you acting bad? I'ma whoop your ass like you my child. Catch me in your house just like a mouse and I won't make a sound. Went to the head and now I'm smashing out. I'm on that Jesus shit. R.I.P. to Jesus, bitch. All my niggas from the streets, they start, we on that Jesus shit. No, I'm not Weezer, but yeah, I'm a Martian. I can't hear you niggas talking, beg your pardon. When you see me, homie, yeah, you see me gooned up. All my niggas start ready to bust my doula. Talking out the side of your neck, not cool, bruh. Make me violent to the puts in your chest with Ruger. When you see me, homie, yeah, you see me gooned up. All my niggas start ready to bust my doula. Talking out the side of your neck, not cool, bruh. Make me violent to the puts in your chest with Ruger.